Now, if you know me in real life, you will know that my language is often colourful, but I try not to swear on Instagram because I know that children are watching. But the word that I would normally use frequently to describe the Brexit process sounds a lot like muster duck. And the level of muster duckedness that has gone on in the past 48 hours is beyond all muster duckedness that has happened until this point. Even Laura Kuntzberg, the BBC political editor, who is not given to hyperbole, described last night's happenings in the House of Commons as extraordinary. And it is extraordinary. And if you got lost last night with what happened, you are not alone. If you did not follow every second of yesterday on Brexit chat, and then also know an awful lot about parliamentary procedure, then you'd be decidedly confused. I was confused. I had to go back and check what had happened. So here it is, Lydia News. Top level summary is that Theresa May came back to Parliament with an unchanged deal that had already been defeated once in the House of Commons, and it was defeated again by another 149 votes. Last night there was a vote where MPs basically ruled out leaving the EU with no deal under any circumstances. And the response from Theresa May has been, well, if you don't want to leave with no deal, and you don't want to extend Article 50 for several years, then you're going to have to vote with my deal, and she is going to take her deal back to the Commons for a third time and try and get Parliament to vote it through. Okay, so if you were trying to follow this and got really confused, so did everybody. What happened was this. So Theresa May and the government put forward a motion, so this is a non-legally binding proposal, shall we call it, to the House of Commons, and their proposal was that this House declines to leave the European Union without a withdrawal agreement and without an agreement of the future relationship on the 29th of March, noting that that is still the default in UK and European Union law. Now, several MPs in the groups have put forward amendments. There were 6 amendments, of which John Bercow, the Speaker, chose that the vote would be on 2 of those amendments. So what the government had put forward basically got shelved, and John Bercow got the House to vote on 2 other amendments. So anyone that thinks the Speaker just sort of makes a lot of it, order, no, he's incredibly powerful, because he is basically deciding what the House of Commons votes on. And when the history books go back and look at Brexit in the future, John Bercow will be incredibly important as a figure in that history, because he's decided how all of this has been voted on all the way through. Crucially, the government wanted the House to rule out leaving the EU on the 29th of March, a motion that is signified here by this duck. Now, what they actually voted on was a same but different motion, which was to rule out leaving the EU without a deal, ever have a free vote on this motion. We don't want this motion. And so they made their MPs vote against it, which is why the majority for ruling out no deal was so slim. Keen observers will also note that they voted on another motion last night, which is called the Malthouse Compromise. And this idea is that you have 2 years of transition and then you leave with no deal at the end of the transition. And that was voted down. Now, what was extraordinary about last night was that several ministers abstained from the vote, and they did so with permission. Now, normally, if you are a member of the cabinet and you do not vote with the Prime Minister, you will either be fired or you have to resign. Neither of which has happened, although I don't rule out resignations happening in the next couple of days. This just shows that Theresa May has absolutely no control over her cabinet, over her party, absolutely nothing. It is utter chaos in the Tory party as well as in Parliament in general right now. And what they think might happen is that she will continue to force her deals through, and she will get it through, but only on the basis that she then immediately resigns and someone else takes over from her. So keep your eyes peeled for that happening. Now, it's highly expected that MPs will vote to extend Article 50 today, but for how long is the crucial question. Originally, Theresa May had suggested a few months, but what are we going to do with a few months apart from kind of carry on in the same vein of just kind of whatever? So Theresa May is now saying actually it's quite likely that that's going to be quite a long time, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. But crucially, it's not up to the UK how long we have, because if we extend Article 50, that is in the gift of the 27 member states of the EU, not the UK. So Theresa May is now saying that the EU don't want to give us 3 months. if it's going to be longer, then we might actually have a fighting chance of getting something in the end. And in the meantime, we'll be paying into the EU budget. We won't have any say in what's going on because our credibility is zero. And for those of you who want Brexit, bumping it down the road means we might not leave at all. So that's her pressure now. So I predicted earlier in the week that Theresa May would lose a meaningful vote. Tick. That MPs would rule out leaving the EU with no deal. Tick. They're probably going to vote for Article 50 to be extended today. So probable tick there. But it then still leaves the thing that there's no other deal on the table apart from Theresa May's deal. She's going to continue battering that through, possibly with her own leadership as part of the bait to make people vote for her. And so I think it's still going to happen. The valid question is, what the hell happens now? There are MPs trying to get a consensus around other options, but the big problem is there has never been a majority in Parliament for anything. In fact, Theresa May's deal, as awful as it is, has the biggest majority at the moment. So she's going to keep bashing on through, and in the meantime, everyone looks around at the other option and goes, they're all equally pants because there is no good version of Brexit. Now, Theresa May's government falls, which is a possibility if she doesn't manage to bash her deal through. There could be a general election, which oh my God. I mean, how would they even write a manifesto right now? How would you vote? Right. I mean, I can't get my head around it. It would just be... Okay, elephant in the room, second referendum. It's still possible. I don't think it's likely, but I also want to address it head on because I know a lot of people have joined recently, so you won't have heard me say this till I am blue in the face, that a second referendum does not mean we will remain in the EU. In fact, very, very far from it, and here's why. The cards on the table. I worked for the UK in the EU for 5 years. I have seen the EU close up, warts and all, and on balance, I think that the UK is better off in the European Union and that we are stronger that way and we make the European Union a better place. However, having campaigned to remain, and if there were another referendum, I would also campaign to remain. I also know that the UK did not make the most of its membership, and we were actually one of the worst members because we behaved like a spoilt child at a birthday party. My problem with the People's Vote campaign is that it assumes and it conveys as a message that if we had another vote, that it would be an overwhelming majority to remain, and that is not the case. If you take an average of all the polls that have been taken since the referendum, it points to a Leave vote of 48% and a Remain vote of 52%. Be in no doubt that that is a very narrow margin and that it could be just down to turnout as to how that goes. But it basically leaves us in pretty much exactly the same position we are now. Equally, the question that could be posed in any referendum is unlikely to resolve all of these very complex issues that I've just spent a huge amount of time talking to you about. I would vote to remain if that were an option. However, I do that with a very, very strong caveat that this is not the answer to all our problems, and I will continue saying that until I'm blue in the face. So if you are in that pool of people that wants to remain in the EU and that opportunity arises, then be prepared for a very uphill struggle in order to convince all those people who have said, you know what, I'm done with it, why the hell are we still in this? Why did we leave 2 years ago? Why didn't we just go then? You're going to have to work incredibly hard, everyone is, if that's what you want. And then, if that happens, you're going to have to make sure that our government makes the most of being in it, because when we were in it before, we absolutely didn't. And we've also allowed, through this hiatus, all sorts of things we didn't want to happen and stood in the way of. They have now happened because of all of the Brexit stuff. So if we go back, it's not going to be as good as it was even before. I'd also like to rephrase the Remain Leave rhetoric and have it as those that see opportunity being with or closely aligned with the EU, and those who see opportunity everywhere else but the EU. Not so snappy, I give you, but it would be fairer.